If your photos are looking softer than a fresh pile of dog turd on a hot pavement, then don't worry, because today we're going to fix all that. We're going to be breaking down the real reasons why your photos aren't tack sharp, how to spot the 6 main causes of blurry or soft photos just by looking at your images, and most importantly, how to fix all of that afterwards. And make sure you stick around for the very last one, because honestly it's one thing that most beginners completely overlook, and once you see how simple it is to apply, you'll be absolutely kicking yourself. Alright, so let's start by looking at the most common problem, and I mean by far the most common problem. Now you'll see this blurriness appear as streaky lines uniformly across the entire image. It almost looks as if somebody has wiped their greasy hands across a wet painting. Now this type of blur is caused by something known as camera shake, and essentially it's what happens when you move the camera around whilst it's still taking the photo. Sometimes those lines will be longer, sometimes they'll be shorter. It really all depends on your shutter speed, your focal length, and how violently you've yanked the camera away from your face, like it just let one rip straight up your nostrils or something. So how do we fix this? Well, there are actually 2 things we need to adjust here. The main offense is that you're likely using a shutter speed that is too slow, and if you use a slow shutter speed, the camera is taking the photo over a longer period of time, and during that time any movements made to the camera whilst you're holding it will cause the photo to blur, hence the term camera shake. And this effect only gets worse the more zoomed in you are, so if you're using a longer lens, these movements will become exaggerated. So first things first, you need to use a fast shutter speed. How fast? Well, unfortunately there isn't really a single shutter speed you can just dial in and forget about, because as we've just discussed, it really does depend on a number of other factors, like how steady your camera is and what focal length you're using. But luckily there is a very safe baseline that you can stick to that will work probably about 90% of the time, and that rule is to keep your shutter speed set to at least double that of your focal length. Let me explain. So for example, if you're shooting with a 50mm focal length, you want to be around 1/100th of a second or faster, because 2 times 50 is 100.
2 plus 2 is 4, minus 1, that's 3, quick math.
So let's try another one. Let's assume for a moment that you're trying to overcompensate for something, and you like shooting with a very long lens, like a 150mm for example. Well, this rule still applies. You just double your focal length, so 150 times 2, which gives you 300. So that means you'll need to keep the shutter speed to at least 1/300th of a second, or ideally faster. Now there are also some exceptions to this rule, because you can get away with shooting at slower shutter speeds if you've got things like IBIS or in-body image stabilization built into your camera, because this setting will allow your camera to compensate for your hand movements, keeping the sensor steady whilst you're taking a photo. Or if you're using a tripod or maybe even a monopod, you probably don't need to worry quite as much about camera shake, because obviously your camera is being supported. So in that instance, you can perhaps get away with using a slightly slower shutter speed if you really need to. But please do not take that as a green light to carry around and shoot from a tripod all of the time for every single shot, because that's another serious mistake I see a lot of rookies making. And trust me, it will only make shooting a huge ball ache, and it really won't improve anything that dramatically. Just get better at bracing yourself whilst taking a photo. Things like holding your breath for a second as you're squeezing the shutter button, or tucking your elbows in and bracing against your chest as you shoot. Or if you prefer shooting using the rear screen like I do, you can always use a camera strap like this and then just simply pull it taut against your neck as you're shooting. This creates tension and stops the camera from wobbling around all over the place, a bit like me after 4 espressos and a mild panic attack, or as I like to call it, a typical Monday morning. Now personally, I'm a huge fan of this strap from PGY Tech, who aren't a sponsor by the way. I just genuinely love their products and wanted to drop them a mention. I think their straps start from around $40, so it's super affordable, and what I like most about this design is that it can quickly detach from your camera, so I can also switch out to a wrist strap or just remove everything entirely in a matter of seconds, which is honestly really helpful. Now I'll be sure to leave a link in a pinned comment below to where you can get this strap if you are interested. Anyway, the next problem can sometimes look very similar to camera shake, but it's actually a completely different problem. So in this photo, we still have those long streaks of blur like we did in the previous one, but if we take a closer look at the rest of the photo, rather than the entire image looking soft, what you'll notice here here is that only parts of the image are blurred, usually whatever is moving at the time the photo was taken. Now, this is what's known as motion blur, and it's caused by subjects moving at speed within your frame whilst the image is being captured. So, for example, you'll see cars and bikes appearing slightly stretched as they move through the frame, whilst the rest of the image remains perfectly sharp. Now, that's exactly how you know it's motion blur. The camera is nice and steady, but your subject, well, isn't. And the reason this happens is exactly the same as before. Your shutter speed is too low. But this time, rather than being too slow and capturing your own movements as you move the camera, it's now too slow to accurately capture theirs. So even if your settings were technically correct using the rule we just learnt a moment ago, this movement that's been introduced to the frame now changes everything. But luckily, fixing this is pretty straightforward. You just need to increase your shutter speed once again to prevent them from being blurred. How fast you set the shutter speed will depend on what you're shooting. If it's people just casually, walking around the street, something like 1/250th of a second is usually enough. But if it's anything faster, like kids running around, sports or wildlife, then you're going to want to push that up to something like 1/500th of a second, maybe 1,000th of a second, or possibly even higher if you're shooting something really fast-paced. Like a politician sprinting away from accountability the moment somebody asks them a real question. Basically, the faster your subject moves, the faster the shutter speed needs to be in order to freeze it. But before we can move on from that point, I do just need to clarify that this type of blur isn't always a bad thing. In fact, motion blur is often used by photographers intentionally as a creative choice. The only time motion blur appearing in your photos would be considered a mistake is when you, as the photographer, didn't intend for it to happen. Now, this next one is actually a really easy one to diagnose and fix, but it's a problem that a lot of new photographers inflict on themselves and try to fix the total wrong way. You'll see what I mean. So, if you take a closer look at this image, you'll notice that parts of the image are actually perfectly sharp, but just not the parts the photographer probably cared about. And I should know because I was the photographer who took the image, and I definitely didn't intend for the background to be crystal clear, and the actual subject I was trying to capture to look like they've had their identity censored, like they're in witness protection or something. But anyway, you've probably already guessed the cause of this. This is what happens when you or your camera misfocuses. The camera has technically done its job. It's found something to focus on. It's just focused on the completely wrong thing. Now, the main issue here is that a lot of people tend to jump the gun when this sort of thing happens, and they just assume that either their camera or their lens is faulty, and they think by sending it off for repair or buying new equipment will solve the problem, when in actual fact, most of the time this can be solved by just adjusting one simple setting. Now, by default, the autofocus on your camera is usually set to something like wide area AF, which basically means that the camera just looks at the scene and kind of guesses what you want it to focus on. Now, sometimes it will get that right, sometimes it will decide that the tree in the background is way more interesting than your subject's face. Brilliant. Thanks, camera. So, how do we fix that? Well, we need to stop letting the camera guess and actually take the wheel and start driving. You do that by switching the focus area to either single point AF or small focus zone. In these modes, you should then see a small box appear on your rear screen or within the electronic viewfinder. Essentially, anything that you hover this box over when you half or fully depress the shutter button will be the object that your camera locks onto. Now, you can move this point around by either tapping on the screen itself or by using a joystick or the rear D-pad on your camera, depending on the make and model of your camera. Now, at first, all of this might feel a little bit slow, but trust me, long term, your hit rate will go through the roof, because now you're no longer just rolling the dice every time you press the shutter, you're actually making creative choices. Now, this next one is a bit more subtle, because it's really not a technical fault, but more of a user error type deal. But once you see it, you'll start noticing it everywhere. Now, if you take a closer look at this image, you'll notice that yes, part of the photo is nice and sharp, but everything behind or in front of that sharp area just falls off a cliff. And the reason for that is because the photographer was shooting wide open with a lens that offers a large maximum aperture. Now, this in of itself isn't the problem. Shooting wide open is perfectly fine and is something a lot of photographers do in order to get that super dreamy, shallow depth of field effect that makes everything feel cinematic and screams, "Look, mummy, I'm a professional photographer." But if your goal is to achieve maximum sharpness within your images, then shooting wide open can actually make it a lot harder to achieve that for two reasons. Firstly, when you shoot wide open, your depth of field becomes ridiculously thin, and that in turn means that the area of sharp focus is about the size of, well, a gnat's cock. So a lot of the time, even when you think you've absolutely nailed the focus, there's a very high chance that it'll be ever so slightly misfocused, because it only takes you or your subject to move ever so slightly as the photo's being taken, and then rather than the eyes being perfectly sharp, you've now managed to perfectly capture every detail on the tip of your subject's nose. Now, to be honest, that's not even the biggest problem, because with a bit of time, patience, and experience, nailing focus will become less of an issue. No, what really makes things worse is that most lenses aren't even at their sharpest when they're shooting wide open. Asking a lens to shoot with a super wide maximum aperture and provide high levels of clarity and sharpness is a very tall order that not many optics can actually pull off perfectly. So you're basically stacking two problems on top of each other: tiny margin for error and slightly softer optics. So how do we fix this? Well, instead of living life at f1.4 like it's some kind of personality trait, why not make things a little bit easier for yourself and just stop down slightly? Even going from f1.4 to f2 or f1.8 to 2.8 can give you noticeable jumps in clarity, contrast, and sharpness without completely killing that nice background blur. Now, this is not me saying that you should never shoot wide open. I personally shoot wide open all of the time because I love the look it creates, but I do so with the understanding that it might be compromising sharpness. For me personally, that's not so much of a big deal, but really that's the key takeaway here. It's knowing when to shoot wide open and when to stop down to maximize sharpness. Anyway, you might have heard me or others on the internet talking about a lens's sweet spot, and no, that's not the same as the area right next to your prostate. They're totally unrelated. No, what we're talking about here is the aperture range where a lens performs at its best. Every lens will have its own sweet spot, but for most lenses that tends to be somewhere around the middle, like f4 to f8, but that's very, very broadly speaking. So if we're chasing optimum sharpness, shooting within or close to that lens's sweet spot is ideally where you want to be. Granted, your ego might just have to accept that you'll be losing some of that sexy background blur in the process, but hey, it's a small price to pay for a photo that actually looks sharp where it matters. Plus, shooting with a slightly narrower aperture will give you more room for error because you'll have a larger area of sharpness and therefore the focus has a bit more room to play in. Hope that makes sense. Now, this next one is a bit of a weird one. Take a look at this photo. Because technically, this image is sharp, but it doesn't kind of look it. You'll notice that there isn't any obvious blur, there's no streakiness, and nothing out of focus, but the image still looks rougher than sandpaper a cheese grater. Well, this is what happens when your ISO is set too high, or more commonly, when your image is underexposed and then pushed in editing afterwards. Because what a lot of people don't realize is that noise doesn't just make your images look grainy, it actually destroys fine details. And to make matters worse, if you then try to fix that noise with noise reduction afterwards, you're basically just smoothing everything out even more, so now you've got a double whammy. So how do we fix this? Well, the main thing is just to get your exposure right in camera, and don't be lazy and rely on the old "I'll fix it in post" excuse, because the more you have to push and pull your image in post, the worse this problem becomes. So as a general rule of thumb, try to keep your ISO as low as you reasonably can, but more importantly, make sure you're not massively underexposing your shots, because a well-exposed image at ISO 1600 will usually look far better than a badly exposed one taken at ISO 100 that you've just had to drag out of the mud later on in Lightroom. Okay, so you've been following along so far and you're pretty sure that you're not falling victim to any of the issues we've listed, but your photos are still looking softer than a politician's spine. Well, this next one is a bit of a painful one because sometimes it's actually your gear that's the problem. Now, if you take a look at this image, you'll notice that everything just looks a little bit, well, hazy, like it was captured after 4 pints down the pub. There's no obvious motion blur, nothing out of focus, and we can assume that the camera settings are now all spot on, but the whole image just lacks that crispiness. Well, in a lot of cases, that's not you messing up. That's probably your lens or something you've put in front of it. Because more often than not, the real culprit here is something much more simple. Usually a dirty front element or a cheap filter you've slapped on the front of it. Even if you've splashed out and bought a lens that costs more than your car, if it's coated in a mixture of fingerprints, snot and dust, and also has some questionable $6 UV filter that you bought from Temu slapped on the front, then you're basically shooting with the equivalent of a tiny window that's been wiped with a greasy kebab wrapper. And no matter how good your settings are or how good the lens is, that's going to instantly kill your sharpness. So how do we fix it? Well, clean your lens for starters. I mean, obviously that's not groundbreaking, but you'd be surprised how many people never do that. Second, if you're using a cheap UV filter, just take it off and see what happens, because if it's a low quality filter, this will absolutely tank your image quality without you even realizing it. Now, if you've never heard of a UV filter before and you don't really know what I'm talking about, then basically some people decide to stick a UV filter, which is basically just a clear piece of glass, on the front of their lens. And the idea is that if they bash or scrape their front element, the UV filter will take most of the brunt and protect the more expensive lens behind it, which makes perfect sense in theory. But personally, I stopped using UV filters a long while back, as I found that they just collect grime, and in bright light they can often introduce extra glare and wash out your images. So instead, I just use the lens hood that comes with the lens, even if it's not a sunny day outside, because this thing does a really good job of protecting the front element, and if I do bump into something, I'd rather replace this bit of plastic than a chunk of glass in the front. Now, I'm sure there are already teams of people racing to the comments to tell me how wrong I am for doing this, and that using UV filters is the only real way to protect your lens. And honestly, if you feel that way, please do not let me be the person who stops you from using your precious UV filters. This is not a hill I want to die on. But I've been taking photos professionally for almost 20 years now, and for most of that time I've been using this technique, and I have never once smashed or damaged a lens. But either way, just pick the method that works best for you and try not to pop a testicle getting all worked up about it. There are far greater problems in the world that we should be worrying about. Either way, let's assume you've taken the UV filter off and you've cleaned the lens within an inch of its life, and you're still getting that slightly soft, low contrast look. Then yeah, I hate to say it, but you might just be hitting the limits of the lens that you're using. At which point, you really have two options. Number one, live within the limits of the lens and just accept it for what it is. Or two, look at investing in some sharper glass. But I don't want this to be the segment where you feel like you have to go out and spend thousands of dollars on a really fancy lens. In fact, I have made a whole video where I tested and ranked 12 of the cheapest full-frame, fully autofocus lenses that you can buy for under $200 each, and you'll be shocked at just how sharp most of these options are. So please, if you do insist on buying new lenses, please at least check out this video first to find some cheaper options before you remortgage your house and sell your children to fund more camera gear. Okay, so now that we've looked at all of the technical issues that can affect sharpness, let's take things one step further. With this next step, we're going to crank things from around about an 8 all the way to a 67 if you're picking up what I'm putting down, and if you don't understand anything I just said, don't worry, I don't really either, but trust me, you're going to want to stick around for this. Now, one important thing most beginner photographers forget is that sharpness doesn't just finish at your camera. There's also a ton of different ways you can add sharpness to an image in post-production to give your photos that extra bit of bite. But before you get too excited and start dragging sliders around like a toddler on an iPad, there is a right way and a very wrong way to do this. Because yes, sharpening in post-production can make your images look better, but it can also absolutely ruin them if you overdo it. If you've ever seen a photo where the edges look all crunchy with a super weird halo kind of effect around everything and skin that looks like it's been made out of gravel, well, yeah, that's called over-sharpening. And it's the fastest way to tell everyone that you don't really have a clue what you're doing, and no judgment, we all have to start somewhere. But on the flip side of that, we also have a lot of people who don't apply any kind of sharpening in post at all, which most of the time can leave your images looking a little bit flat and lifeless. So what you really want is something right in the middle, just enough to enhance what's already there without making it look like it's been aggressively Botoxed. So I'm going to show you the sharpening settings that I personally use and have actually used religiously for the past 15 years or something stupid like that, and this method really hasn't changed in all of that time. It takes about 2 seconds to apply and works pretty much every time. First of all, I'm going to show you how to do it in Lightroom, as that's my personal go-to editing suite for, you know, all my sins. But I'll also show you how to do this in Photoshop too, and if you happen to use some other different type of editing software, then don't worry, because most of this is very translatable, because they all kind of do the same thing anyway. Okay, so in Lightroom, first of all, go to the Detail panel and locate the sharpening sliders. And then all you want to do here is set the amount to 50 and then the radius to 2. Yeah, that's it. Nothing crazy. Just enough to bring out the natural details that your camera has captured. Now, I personally trust this method so much that I even baked it into my own set of Lightroom presets, which I have for sale on my website. So if you already happen to be using my presets to help you dramatically speed up your workflow, then you don't even need to worry about this step at all, because it's already done for you with a click of a button. But if you haven't seen my presets before, then be sure to check them out at tomcalton.com and use the code in the pinned comment below to grab yourself 10% off your purchase. Anyway, as for Photoshop, instead we want to go up to Filter, Sharpen, Unsharp Mask. Now in the window that appears, you'll notice that the same kind of sliders are all present here as they were in Lightroom, so all we need to do is enter the same values as before. We set the amount to 50 and the radius to 2 pixels. That's it. Now, just to clarify, these are just the settings that I personally prefer to use, so if you want to push things a little bit harder or maybe not as hard, then obviously feel free. After all, it's your art and you can do what you like. But just like most things in life, please just remember that there's a very fine line between artistic and what the f just happened here?